All right, you're good to go.
Thank you, Keith. Hi, everyone. If you're watching from home, thanks for joining. My name's Eric Lashinsky. I'm an artist who was selected to do this public art project for Clayton Street, and good to be with you tonight. I want to start with this image here because I was fortunate to catch this this performer, the band that was setting up behind her on a recent visit to Athens. I live in Annapolis, Maryland, about 10 hours away. I came down to Athens early December, spent a lot of time walking back and forth down Clayton Street, and if you were out doing holiday shopping, you would have seen me logging a lot of mileage, and it was great. It was important for me to get the feel for the place. It was my first time there, and on my way out of town, I caught these guys performing, and it was an important moment because I don't want to take away from this in the project I'm doing. It's really important to kind of allow for these sort of moments to happen. There's a lot of art already happening on Clayton Street, and I was fortunate to be able to take it all in. I want to back up for a sec, and just talk about this project and, where it came from. And it's been a process. I was selected about 2 years ago for this project, and the streetscape project itself, goes back further in terms of planning and logistics, design. So there were times where I didn't think the public art project was going to happen. It is happening. I'm thrilled to be part of it, doing this project. And these slides are from the presentation that I gave 2 years ago. There was a proposal. It was a concept proposal for the public art project. Anybody who has submitted a proposal for something very early stages knows that you sometimes have to kind of go with your instincts. You may not have all the information you should have or would want, and that was certainly the case here. I mean, I had not been to Athens. I did my homework. I kind of looked at everything I could from afar and all the projects that have been happening around downtown Athens, and I came up with this idea for essentially a public artwork that would be kind of like infrastructure. This idea of, it's a funny idea, but I'm imagining like a 2,000 linear foot long bike rack. That's kind of an insane idea. It would probably not be the best idea, but I was just thinking about public artwork that could kind of connect these multiple blocks for this project. We're talking about a project that has to go from Lumpkin to Thomas along Clayton, and so it's not just one specific location, and it was really very open-ended in terms of where the artwork could be. And at the time, I didn't have a lot of information about the kinds of street furnishings that might be part of the street redesign. And so I thought, well, maybe the art could be that, and so it's very functional and could serve to also be sort of a fun, interactive piece and give some additional identity to the streetscape. And, I was also just trying to be sort of respectful of what's there already, and there's a lot that's already on Clayton Street that's not going anywhere. And on my visit in early December, I was able to see all of that really well. This was from a presentation shortly after getting selected for the project. It was a presentation to the city council or city county council. And this was another image that I created to try to provide a little bit more of an illustration of what this project might be. And you can see at this stage, I'm really sort of zeroing in on these places along the corridor where there maybe enough space to do an artwork that could coexist with everything else, utilities and other street furnishings, and not impede access. And so it's these kind of tubular sculptures that would occupy these moments along the streetscape. And the idea is they stop and start, and you kind of get the sense that there's this running thread connecting the blocks. So that was the last thing I did prior to this fall when I came back on board, and then I started thinking about the project. But it wasn't until I really got down to Athens in early December that I was able to start to refine the idea and really just start to think about something that would be appropriate and was highly tailored to what you have on Clayton Street and what you're going to have with the new streetscape. So I was really taken by all of these moments on Clayton Street right now or during the holiday season where there are these felt like temporary art moments where I caught it seasonally or something that hadn't been up that long, and I documented a lot of these, because it's important to sort of acknowledge that this is a street that has a very specific character, and it's being written every day, in the businesses that choose to do something to generate some more visibility, artists who are doing things that may be informal or commissioned, these kind of projects from the ACAC that are very formal, very specific, but you could miss them and you could walk right past and not notice it. And when you do notice it, it adds a layer of interest, I think, to the street. It caught this ginkgo tree shedding, and it's just so beautiful with the light hitting it. And moments like this with just something so utilitarian, window gets this security bar treatment that is artistic, is way more than what it needs to be. Fire hydrants everywhere being sort of appropriated by artists. I got a dog here. I'm going to let him out. Hold on for a second. And then if you get off Clayton Street and you look around, you see art in some very unlikely places. It's just this parking garage. And then you have kind of more obvious moments. I participated in this seasonal display that I saw a lot of other people doing as well and enjoying it. I get really into these historic fragments or remnants that still exist too, that talk about the life of this place prior to now. It was during a different time, and you got to think like, well, these sort of treatments, these touches, they've lasted. They're doing something that people appreciate. They lend a sort of another layer of interest that people want to protect and preserve, and that's kind of what as an artist, sort of aspiring to do something that might have that kind of value. And I'm also interested in these fleeting moments that they sort of signal that the street is being appreciated in many different ways, and it functions in so many different ways, and its infrastructure, it can be used in so many different ways. Railings everywhere that kind of signals businesses or how they're using the public realm, and the importance of that sidewalk space for not just walking, but stopping. And it's during COVID, the sidewalk space and the streetscape have taken on an even greater kind of reverence because of that. That's where we need to spend our time more and more. And so it was interesting to see how those spaces have been carved out by restaurants in all sorts of ways. And it's the same way here in Annapolis where I live. This is a survival mechanism for a lot of businesses. I'm glad that we're able to do this. I appreciate the look of these things taking on a different appearance everywhere I go. People using materials they have in hand, and then the street is going to get a complete sort of makeover in terms of seating and planting and street furnishings. But I can't help but appreciate the kind of layeredness of what it currently has. And this is in the process of being sort of dismantled. It seems, the bike rack sort of just leaning against that post and different layers of pavement. In the time I was in Athens, it was supposed to be a game day weekend. That I think Vanderbilt was on the schedule. The game didn't happen. I didn't get to see what that would look like, and admittedly, it wouldn't have been a typical game weekend. But I did get to see a lot of people in the freezing cold, spending time on the street at night, and that was good to see. I think it's not my first time doing a project in a college town. I know how people will use this street, and it was interesting to see just how many people are out on a freezing cold night in December with a lot of people not even on campus. But it was just a reminder that anything I do is going to have to deal with a lot of people coming through downtown. And then, seeing the kind of evolution of Clayton happening before my eyes was also important. College Square, this is not giving you a glimpse of how popular this was when I was there, but, this is just probably on a Sunday morning, but this was a very well-used space. I could see that. So it's interesting to imagine it being used full-time moving forward. It was important for me to also look at the kind of public art that is in Athens today, the kind of things that the commission has supported. And, what I'm working on is going to fit into this history of public art in Athens. That resonates for me. I'm adding to sort of the collection, I guess you could say, of the city. And I appreciate being able to see the numerous bus stops all over town that had been commissioned by artists. This, I think, is a relatively new piece in the park, and it was just kind of a early morning, so not surprising. Wasn't a lot of people out, but I found this spot, which I think was probably just a private art park in the south part of the town. I made it to the Linden House. I had some great guides while I was in town. Tatiana from the commission gave me some really good insight into Athens, and we went to see the exhibitions at the Linden House Museum. And this is not part of the exhibition. I was taken by this because I'm interested in a lot of art that is not, it's sort of walking a fine line between being a piece of culture and something that's natural. And this, to me, was walking that line. I appreciate it as a form, organic quality of it. It had a history that I didn't know, but there's also just kind of an imposing sculpture here in the field, just like the murmur trestle, which I also appreciated as something that sort of exists as a pseudo art in a way. And so I'm trying to, during this visit, I'm trying to come up with a sense of the character of Athens that I can respond to with my project, and this storefront speaks to me about that. It has personality that I feel like is really part of Athens, in all these signs and the way it's communicating to people walking by. I know this place is a fixture for Clayton Street. I appreciated these public service announcements. These two suggest a kind of personality for Clayton Street and Athens, the kind of things that matter, that give downtown Athens identity, and music is really a significant part of that. As I saw when I caught the Pink Flamingo and her band on that Sunday morning. Even though the Georgia Theater may not be having shows right now, it's got somebody who's spending some good time programming its marquee board. And so I started thinking about, it's impossible to not think about music when you come to Athens, and the history precedes it. And I'm trying to not do a piece that's derivative of music, but I'm also sort of interested in coming up with form that can somehow reference this character of Athens and downtown Athens. And I'm searching for the forms that will make this public artwork. And, I'm getting off Clayton Street here and taking a hike and going down along the river and really appreciating this map and the information it's sharing. In some ways, this river is kind of the counterpoint to Clayton Street. It complements Clayton Street, but it's the opposite of Clayton Street in a way, because it's so organic. And Clayton Street is all about the architecture. But then there are these moments that you encounter on Clayton Street that really kind of go against, in my opinion, the kind of cultural environment of the street, this sort of gnarled root of this tree, and it's important to acknowledge that Clayton Street is going to get an incredible new streetscape, and a lot of these sort of elements of its history are not going to be there. A lot of history will be there in terms of the businesses, the architecture, plaques, memorials, various other landmarks, street furnishings, a lot of new trees, a lot of new paving. And so I had to sort of reconcile what is going to be new and what's going to stay. And I modeled a segment of the streetscape. This is from Lumpkin, the college, and to try to understand what this new streetscape would be and what I could do to maybe bring some of that organic quality that has come out over the years in all these different layers of add-ons to the street by artists and others, by these trees becoming all gnarled, and the music, which is also a kind of fleeting element. What could this artwork do that would sort of be a counterpoint to this very clean, refined streetscape? And I pieced together, you can see on the top of this slide, all of the facades on the north side of the street. I did that for the south as well. You know, and you get this sense, if you follow that roof line, that cornice line of these buildings, and it's just this kind of silhouette that has a lot of right angles. And I kept feeling like all of these observations were pointing me to creating forms that would have a more scriptive quality to them. I looked at the spaces that I could use on the streetscape, and you know, to me, they kind of broke down into three basic places where I could work. In green, you have these kind of primary locations, bump outs at the intersections. In yellow, you have some other bump outs where there's less space to work because of utilities and street furnishings. Even in the green areas, you can see in these blow-ups. This is at College Avenue. I mean, there's still quite a lot going on here, and so you're trying to fit artwork in. It can be challenging. And then in orange, these are all kind of the in-between places where, you know, you have a pedestrian path that you don't want to impede, and then you have a kind of planting zone, which has parking meters and planters, and something could happen there, but it has to be within a certain width. So I'm starting to think about the constraints here, and that's kind of also pointing me to this project, what this project will look like. I started to think about, you know, these three types of spaces. There's green areas where there's the most space available, could be these places for announcement, larger moments, you know, art moments, you know, it could be visible to cars and people. These could be standalone sculptural pieces, serve as gateways. They could still be interactive, semi-functional, larger in scale. So you think about it, College Avenue, and look like on the south side at Thomas could accommodate something like that. And then this bump out in the middle of the northwest block here. Moments for discovery. These are smaller pedestrian scale, human scale pieces integrated with other street furnishings, also interactive in other ways, and semi-functional. I say semi-functional because I'm interested in artwork that don't really, I think the difference between art and sort of design street furnishings is that one, the street furnishings tell you how to use them in general, and art doesn't necessarily, isn't that prescriptive, you know, and so I'm thinking about forms that, where it may not be clear exactly what you're supposed to, how you're supposed to interact with it. That's really important to me. I don't really want to compete with the street furnishings that might be there. I want to complement them. I want to maybe engage with them in a way where the art might become the armrest on a bench, and somebody might encounter that. And that's what I mean by discovery, that you might sit on a bench and notice the artwork, and it may not hit you in the face, but it may be a pleasant sort of appreciation that you didn't see before. But then there are moments of surprise where you're walking and you see something in your path and it doesn't impede you, but it's an encounter. And this is something that might be embedded in the sidewalk. So it's not necessarily interactive. You could walk right over it and not notice it, not functional, but it could be an unexpected encounter, and certainly human scale and visible to pedestrians. And I started thinking about rules. You know, I just wanted to share this because I think it's important to acknowledge that there's a responsibility in creating an artwork that's going to be in the public realm and last and you know, improve the streetscape. So these are just some of the things that came to mind that I just said, well, I got to keep these front and center on my, on my radar, that, whatever I do has to be in keeping with these types of rules. And some of them they're not, there's a gray area here in terms of what is and what isn't. But I think generally I know I can tell if something is enhancing a streetscape or isn't, or if it's going to be a hazard or not. So I started thinking about combining these moments: announcement, surprise, discovery, or announcement, discovery, surprise. And these are kind of the forms that I started to work with. Basically, they're driven by scale, as I was just saying, and kind of what they're trying to do in their relationship to the street, and they can be linked together or not. So this is just kind of showing a plain vanilla of what that might look like. Thinking about materials, I'm working with a welder, a metal worker here in Annapolis to fabricate these, and we've been talking about the type of material to use, and this is a 2-inch steel pipe that has about a 3/8-inch wall, and in his words, this is a very durable material. I mean, he can the radius that it can be bent is pretty wide spectrum, and it's in his view, would be fairly indestructible even on a street like Clayton that's going to get a lot of traffic. So this is kind of a material that I'm working with right now. I'm starting to work with some physical models in the last few weeks to kind of show what some of these forms could be. This is actually I just kind of took all of these variations and put them on a maquette, so you can kind of see this is not what the street would look like. This is all of these different variations thrown together. You could see a set of benches right here. It tries to reflect some of the compositions on the streetscape where you're going to have benches facing each other. And I'm starting to model in the computer to show what some of these forms could be. This is a bump out of the sidewalk area at Lumpkin and Clayton on the north side, and is pretty accurate to what would be there in terms of street furnishings and the kind of space I have to work with. This is a light post that also doubles as a traffic signal base, and and so there are places where I'm going to impede pedestrians and places where I won't impede pedestrians. This is a place that I think would be fairly safe from that, and then you can kind of see I'm creating something in the pavement right here, and then something around the benches, and this is a view from the other angle. I want to just kind of show I'm still working on a lot of these iterations, and I have to give a presentation to City Council in early February, so I'm going to be developing this further, and that's why it was important to do this presentation now, kind of for a more broad audience, to see what people think. This is another view of that, where the piece is kind of subtle from this angle. Here's another example. Perspective, you can see the actual bike rack here. And then you're walking down from Lumpkin towards College Avenue, and you might encounter something in this planting area. And this, from this angle, it looks like it might be challenging to if you were parking to get to the sidewalk. This actually doesn't, there's room to get past the artwork. And frankly, I'm working with all of these constraints right now to sort of make sure that this piece is going to actually be something that'll improve the pedestrian experience and not, work against it. I have to think about skateboarders as well, and how they're going to engage these artworks. And so this one could be fun for them. But this is, that kind of moment of surprise where the artwork could frankly be integral with the sidewalk in that way. And I started to think about, I've done a lot of projects involving messaging, text, large text, in many cases, and a lot of the messages that make their way into the work come from community members. Sorry, I'm going to let my dog out again. You didn't get the memo that I'm giving a presentation. But I started to think, well, there are lyrics in songs that, taken out of context, could be kind of interesting to encounter on a streetscape, even if somebody does make a connection with the artist that created it, the musician that created it. That would probably improve, its appreciation. But I just thought, well, these are opportunities to sort of really in a more direct way, have this piece have some connection to Athens. It's sort of abstract sculptural project, but this, I think, could maybe bring it back to something that people could relate to differently. And for some people, it might make them appreciate it more. And so I started to wonder, well, there are people in Athens that probably could help come up with some lyrics that would make sense for this. So I'm thinking about posing this question public, as a kind of a survey on the Cultural Commission's website, and so stay tuned for that. But I think this could be a fun aspect of this project, and this is maybe a more mainstream piece of lyric here, but I think there's a lot of musicians in Athens that could use some attention, so other than REM. So how this part of the project could end up in the pavement, there's three basic ways of doing it as far as I can tell. Sandblasting into concrete is something that you see all the time, and could be pretty doable here. Thermoplastic is something used, for a lot of pavement markings. It's also very common, and you can see it all over Athens with new bike lane striping and signalization, traffic markings on the streetscape, and then the metal plate is something else that I think is more of an art kind of application, but could be pretty doable as well. And so costs vary. That's another side of this that I'm trying to figure out. They all have different prices, and I'm working within a budget here, so that's another part of this. This is my collaborator on this project, metal worker here in Annapolis that I'm working with. I just wanted to kind of give folks a sense of the reality of this project, and that at some point soon it's going from concept into design drawings that somebody could actually build from. And powder coating steel or aluminum is a critical part of this. Powder coating is really kind of the industry standard for anything that's going to put up with a lot of abuse. You can see anything that's good for a bucket bigger or a trash, municipal trash can or a bike is probably good enough for these artworks. And there's quite a wide spectrum of colors to pick from. In fact, this company that makes the pigment or the powder coating has several lines of paint selections, color charts to pick from. So I'm trying to figure out what line is most appropriate for this. And that is my presentation for tonight. And I'm happy to answer questions. It looks like I spoke for a little longer than I wanted to, but we have plenty of time. And
All right. All right, Eric, appreciate that. And if you're listening or on the call outside, if you want to put questions in the chat or the Q&A, we'll get those up for Eric and Eric. We do have a couple here. You mentioned one of them about the work needing to be sturdy for skateboarding. That was one of the comments that came in. And then what do you think the lifespan of the artwork is? That's one question.
Well, I think my contract it's supposed to be a 25-year lifespan. So that's what I'm aiming for. Things age. It will be impacted in different ways. People might put a sticker on it. They might scratch it. Who knows? But the idea is that the form will last. That's it could get hit by a car. You don't really know what's going to happen. But
that's right.
But this thing will be designed to put up with abuse day after day, and that's really kind of the way I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
I try to think about how people will use these things, and I try to scenario out everything I can think of, but never that I'm going to forget something. But
right.
Yeah, so 25 years, I guess, is the best answer there.
All right. One of the others, how will you incorporate the color? Do you expect all unison or different per block or street side, or what was your plan there for color?
I'm actually right now I'm looking at a single color, that everything is going to be a single color. I'm interested. This blue that I'm using is something that I'm leaning towards right now. It's I was kind of taken by you could think of it as there is a water reference here, but I'm also I'm trying to get away from it's hard to sort of get away from UGA colors. I think they're everywhere on Clayton Street. I'm thinking about colors that will go well with red and gray and black. So that's part of my thinking here. But I think for me, it's important that I'm doing multiple modules of this sculpture along Clayton Street. I probably just need to reiterate that I'm still trying to pin down the locations, but I'm doing these kind of pipe or pavement pieces in multiple locations, and I think color is an important way that people can make the connection between the forms itself. They'll be related in that way, but I think color is also a really important way for people to make the connection that this is something that repeats in different places along the street. So,
sure.
Yeah.
And one other was not necessarily a question, but a comment for the lyrics that you mentioned. You might reference or maybe think about connecting them to the Music Walk of Fame artist. So that's all the questions we have so far. If anybody else has a question, or if you want to ask a question in person versus putting it in the chat or the Q&A. If you want to use the raise your hand feature, then we can unmute and let you ask your question that way as well.
Eric, hi, Andrew here. I just want to say thank you for your devotion to this project in our downtown in particular. It's fun watching this process evolve in your creative process, actually, now that we're on this project in earnest. So thank you for that. I really love the concept of integrating some lyrics and like Keith said, a possibility is the Athens Music Walk of Fame. Artists, perhaps that committee that selects those musicians could be involved in this process as well. Another thing to consider is that we're launching a poet laureate initiative. So that could be yet another body that helps integrate the words of Athens into this very project.
Thanks for
So
the heads up on that.
Person will be selected. The application is live now. That person will be selected by, let's say, March.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I should probably share for folks listening or who might watch this later, the time frame on this project. I'm trying to work in parallel with the streetscape improvements. That's the goal, although if our work most likely will go in after the other elements of the streetscape are already in, but I'm trying to stay in line with the larger streetscape project, and so we're really we're moving at this point. I'm trying to stay on schedule, and like as I mentioned earlier, giving a presentation to the council in early February that I would hope allows me to get some sort of sign off to keep moving and developing drawings for this work so that so it can be buildable and coordinated with the streetscape project. I think that's really key to make sure that whatever I'm doing is not going to be in conflict with other things that are going to get built on the street. So I have a set of the construction documents. I've been provided with everything I need to make sure that things are coordinated.
Thank you, Eric. And there was another question from Russell. Can you unmute Russell, Keith?
Sure, that was good.
Hey, Eric. Hey, everybody.
Hey, Russell.
This might be more directed towards the SPLOS folks, but just thinking about, the conflict correlation with art and the installation, I was looking at one of your concept photos and noticed, your art sort of winding along some tree boxes, and then the tree boxes sort of had this generic metal fencing. And I was thinking to myself, could we expand your work's reach by replacing some of these off-the-shelf sort of tree box gates with your own custom work, and sort of leverage the, replace some of the traditional infrastructure purchasing on these metal items with purchasing some of your concept or some more of your work. I know we probably can't do it, item for item, but how could we? Yeah, that's the picture. I see that and I think to myself, okay, well, there's other metal there. Can Eric create metal there too?
I have to just say that the railing on the planter boxes, I winged it a little bit in terms of what that might be, because I think that was called out in the construction documents as just a 15-inch tall planter railing, but it didn't show the exact designs. There's a few furnishings I think are still being selected, just typical, but So it may not look exactly like that. I want to acknowledge that, but your idea, I mean, it makes sense to me. I think there could be some instances like this where the artwork does kind of become the railing on the planter box if that was feasible, but it just requires the coordination, I think. I don't know.
Well, Keith, maybe Keith could, Keith Sanders. I mean, Keith, do you follow what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Is that possible here? Because I know that certainly was, that this idea was a real impetus for me to support the selection of Eric, because I was thinking, oh, this is great. You know, he can create functional art as well to, you know, construct some of these more traditional infrastructure items in a creative way. Not just apply art on existing traditional infrastructure, but use his art to replace traditional infrastructure. Is that possible?
Well, I guess, you know, anything's possible. It's not, I guess, not what we had discussed so far, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's the wrong question. I mean,
I
you know,
yeah, I understood what you meant. I understood what you meant, though. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be a smart aleck with my answer. That wasn't my intent either.
No, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I guess can we do? You know, can we do it? I mean, do you think what would it take to do that? I mean, would it take more input from the Mayor and Commission, or what? How do we get there? I mean,
Well, I don't know if you know, if that's. I don't know that we've had that discussion with Eric, and if that's what he is looking for as part of his presentation. You know, the way he wants to present his art. We've not tried to dictate too much what his art was. I would think that we would want some input from commission when we get to those furnishings, because part of, you know, not only the art, but it's also trying to create the standardization and the look of consistency as well for the whole corridor. So
Right.
that's part of the consideration. And then, of course, his contract value is you know, it's the 1% of the public art. So if we're I mean, 1% of the construction cost. So if we're increasing that to replace other pieces, then that's a change order to his contract for that.
right. I guess I think of it more as like, maybe we could frame it in a way like, hey, Eric, we're going to be putting a bench here. Here's another opportunity where you maybe could create some of your art. You know, are you interested? What kind of cost? Here's what we were planning on spending on a traditional looking bench. Are you interested in expanding the scope of your art to craft part of this, and what would it cost? I know it requires more work, obviously, but thinking about how this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for all of us, I just want to, you know, I think this extra step of coordination and work can really help create a cohesive experience between the existing infrastructure and Eric's art installation.
I think that the railing component is probably one of those elements that would make the most sense. You know, and we're just talking, you know, maybe in one or two instances. I think, you know, I think the value is in doing it in places where people might not expect it, you know. So you have the rhythm, and there is a really strong rhythm to the design of the streetscape with these planters and benches and trees, and you know, I appreciate that, because then that's something I'm, you know, riffing off of. But to me, that would be one element that would make the most sense in a couple places to, you know, to use the artwork for, you know, where it's, it just seems like it wouldn't be that tricky, you know, just in terms of the critical path of construction. You know, it's probably one of the later things to go in, and so I mean, we can have a conversation offline, I think, about, with the, with Keith and his team and see that I like the idea. I've been trying to steer clear of things that might upset the process, but I think that of all the things, that one, it seems to me, from my understanding of how these projects come together, that would be more straightforward. I think the points about the change order and stuff, and that's another element, but just in terms of coordination with the construction, I mean, it seems like, could be more straightforward, but yeah, I'm totally open to exploring that. And, I think for the council presentation, I could probably do a version that integrates something like that, just as an alternate.
Well, and I know, Eric, you mentioned, part of what you're going for are these moments of surprise. So, I mean, sort of picking out places throughout the corridor to work with Keith to incorporate little surprises where the traditional streetscape rhythm is interrupted with your artwork, could be really interesting to create cohesion between the traditional infrastructure and your art.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. We can certainly talk about that more, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense what Eric's, what you're both saying. Like, I'm not, just those strategic points, not a sort of wholesale, oh, we got, 20 tree cages. Eric, what do you think about doing those? No, I get what you're saying there, Keith. I think, but yeah, just those strategic points where maybe Eric could have a proposal to interrupt the rhythm of that traditional design with some of his art. So
Right.
Thanks, guys. That sounds good.
Sure. Thank you for that. Yeah. Is there any couple of comments? I don't know if you saw, Eric, about colors of, somebody mentioned that blue and orange is a UGA rival, but I don't think we're prohibited from using. I don't think that prohibits us from using blue. Maybe just not that shade of blue. But another comment that followed that was the connection to the river does make sense. Ours tends to be a little more muddy brown. The last time it was really that bright blue was I think a chemical spill some years ago. So that was. But anyway, so just those are the comments. Anyone else have comments or?
Eric, what can we expect at the commission presentation?
Great question. You can expect these visualizations I'm going to be kind of locking into some locations that I think make the most sense. So I'll be more clear about where along the corridor I'm looking to locate the artworks. I'm going to provide some dimensions so it's a little more clear, what the size of these things is and how they relate, particularly in relation to human scale. And so like an example here, I will likely do a elevation view that kind of shows, looking at maybe from the street, how this piece fits between those planters or, or becomes the planter. So it's a little bit, I think what's important for me to present to you all at that point is just some more clarity on the extent of this, so that, if there's any concerns about impediment or, exactly what it's going to do to the streetscape experience, I can kind of assuage any concerns. And, I'm kind of working on pricing and stuff now. So think what I present is going to be a little more true to, what the sort of extent of this will be based on the budget I have. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to keep making it more real. I guess that's the idea.
Yeah, if I could help the commissioner, one of the at this stage, what we've asked him to present and what we normally get and ask mayor and commission to approve is really the general type and look of the art, but not the exact details. Those always get fleshed out in the fabrication process or the continuation of drawings, but that you get enough of a look from what he's presenting to know and have an expectation of a general expectation of what's going to show up on the ground. You're not surprised later.
Cool.
Okay.
I guess one last thing I wanted to highlight for Keith and Eric, and I talked to the mayor about this the other day, how, everything seems to be moving in the direction towards, really maintaining College Square as a pedestrian plaza, allowing for emergency vehicle access, with maybe a soft bump or something like that. I have not heard one person complain about College Square. I think once it finally got done, people really grew to appreciate how just important it is to have public meeting spaces in our downtown. I think it's been a great success just through the, putting some picnic tables out there. Basically, that's all we've done. Some umbrellas and picnic tables is all it really took to make people really appreciate this. So, Keith, I mean, would it help or what do y'all think? I mean, when I look at College Square, I'm like, okay, this is coming up for a vote, I think February or March to make this pilot permanent. And, we're doing this big project here on Clayton. Is there any coordination or anything more the mayor and commission should do here to provide guidance or encouragement to sort of seize this moment on College Square?
Well, that's a much bigger question for, depends on what you want to do as a project. I don't think that anything we're doing as part of our project is going to prohibit or limit what your options are on the square in the future. I don't think the Clayton Street project has the funding available left to do a whole rework of that and make that a big plaza type event space versus more minor conversion, at least at this point from what we know in the budget. But I think the main thing is that nothing that we're going to be doing is going to preclude other work from happening in the future. Depending on where funding, it'd probably be one of those things that looks for funding for the next T-Splost, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I think that's right. It'd be T-Splost the next T-Splost to really build it out and engineer.
It was a proposal that they put forth, and I forget now if it was in the SPLOST 2020 or the T-Splost for that plaza. So it would be something I'd see Downtown Development Authority probably putting back as another project.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my guess. I mean,
it would be pretty straightforward, in that future project to extend the artwork, in some form for College Square. So I think that's another value in kind of what I'm developing. It can sort of expand in all directions, I mean, I think if you go in that direction of making College Square a full-time public, pedestrian space, and you really want to connect it to Clayton architecturally in some way. I mean, the artwork could extend as well. I mean, I think that would be at that point it would be pretty straightforward. So I mean, I'm already looking at those bump outs, where College Square meets Clayton. So if, in a future project, if there was a desire to have something at Broad Street that was part of the same artwork, I mean, that would be pretty feasible, I think. So.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? We're at our time, but I want to make sure we get everybody's questions if they have one.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to anyone watching this, after the fact, if there's any questions or concerns you have for Eric or Splost or anyone, you can email us at info@athensculturalaffairs.org, and we'll pass those questions on to Eric or the Splost team or one of our commissioners or whatever.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Eric, for a good presentation. Thank you for everybody for participating.
Thanks, Eric. This is great.
Yeah. Appreciate the opportunity. Just again, I'm thrilled to be working on this project, and I guess there'll be updates on the Cultural Affairs website, and so that's just probably the place to look if you want to follow along. So thanks everybody for watching.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Well done.
All right.
Thank y'all.
Okay.
Y'all have a good night.
Have a great night.
Thanks, y'all. Bye now.
Bye.